In the quiet suburb of Long Beach, California, the hustle and bustle of everyday life is occasionally interrupted by news of disturbing discoveries. But nothing compares to the horror that emerged in February 2012. It's the kind of story that haunts the minds of residents, sending shivers down their spines. It all began when authorities were alerted to a storage unit belonging to Robert Devi Hoskins, a man whose dark past chilled even the sunniest. Hoskins was no stranger to the public eye. He infamously threatened to kill pop icon Madonna, a crime for which he had been convicted years earlier. His behavior was erratic, and it was this unpredictability that eventually led to his escape from a mental hospital. His recapture was a relief to many, but what was discovered in his archives revealed the extent of his twisted mind. The storage unit, housed in a nondescript facility, looked like any other from the outside. But when the officers pried open the door, the atmosphere inside seemed to darken. The first thing they saw was a headless baby doll, its decapitated body lying amid a collection of knives that glowed ominously in the dim light. The scene was horrifying, a macabre display that spoke to a mind that had sunk deep into darkness. But this was only the beginning. As they dug deeper into the unit, they found a series of horrifying objects that would haunt them for years. There was a clown mask, the smile painted on it turning into something of a nightmare in the sterile storage room. Nearby was a sumo wrestler doll, its once comical appearance now distorted by the dark surroundings. A Barbie backpack, an innocent child's accessory, sat in the corner, a jarring contrast to the menacing atmosphere. Each item in the warehouse seemed to carry a story of fear and obsession, but the headless doll, the knife, and the clown mask were especially terrifying, as they seemed to symbolize Hoskins's insane fantasies. Investigators could almost feel the oppressive weight of his madness, weighing down on them as they cataloged the items in the warehouse. The discovery sent shockwaves through the community, and even seasoned police officers found themselves struggling to sleep at night, images of the grotesque collection replaying in their minds. It's a stark reminder of the horrors that can lurk behind the most ordinary facades, and a chilling insight into the mind of a man who jumped too close to the brink of sanity. The Copeland family had always been the picture of suburban perfection. Their modest home sat on a quiet street, where only the sounds of children playing or the occasional barking dog could be heard. But behind the white picket fence, a darkness was brewing that no one could have foreseen. It started out innocent enough. Mrs. Copeland was cleaning her 10-year-old son's room, picking up toys and clothes, when she noticed something strange, a small metal safe tucked away in the corner of a closet. She didn't remember ever buying him such a thing, and when she asked her son about it, he responded with misty, pleading eyes, insisting that he didn't want to talk about it. The The safe wasn't large, but its presence made her uneasy. Mrs. Copeland's curiosity gnawed at her until she couldn't stand it any longer. She called her husband, Mr. Copeland, to see if he knew anything about it. He didn't know, and together they decided to open the safe. After a few minutes of struggling with the lock, Mr. Copeland finally pried it open. What they found inside shattered their world. There, stuffed into the tight space of the safe, was the severed head of their beloved dog, a Labrador named Daisy. The dog had recently passed away, her death believed to be due to old age. They had buried it in the yard, holding a small ceremony that their son attended with tears streaming down his face. They never expected him to dig it up later. As they stood there, frozen in horror, blood began to pool around the bottom of the safe, seeping from beneath the dog's head. Mrs. Copeland screamed, her hands flying to her mouth, while Mr. Copeland staggered back, his mind reeling from the horror of the scene. It was their son's voice that brought them back to reality, a soft, trembling confession that he loved Daisy so much that he couldn't bear to be away from her. He dug her up, cut off her head with a small kitchen knife, and placed it in the safe, believing that in this way a part of her would stay with him forever. The words were harmless, but the actions were anything but. The parents struggled with a fear they had never known, a fear of their own child. How could such a sweet, loving boy do such a terrible thing? They didn't know what to do, who to turn to, or even how to begin to deal with the darkness that had taken root in their son. From that day on, their home would never be the same. The Copeland family can no longer look at their son without seeing the horror he hides in his room. A reminder that sometimes the scariest monsters are the ones we never see coming. In the humid summer of 2012, a small, nondescript storage facility in Pensacola, Florida, became the center of one of the most disturbing discoveries the town had ever seen. The facility was auctioned off, its contents sold to an unsuspecting buyer who could never have anticipated the horrors that lay within. Dr. Michael Birkland was once a respected medical examiner, but his career took a nosedive in 2003 when he was fired for failing to complete autopsy reports on time and allowing cases to pile up. But the dismissal was just the tip of the iceberg. What no one knew at the time was that Dr. Birkland had a strange hobby that he kept hidden from the world. The buyer, eager to sift through his new purchases, was met with an unimaginable sight when he opened the storage unit. The first thing he noticed was the overpowering chemical smell, a heady mix of formaldehyde and decomposition. Then he saw it. Body parts, dozens of them, stored in various containers throughout the storage unit. The discovery was the stuff of nightmares. Tupperware containers, trash bags, and even styrofoam cups containing human body parts, brains, hearts, lungs, and tissue samples, all collected during autopsies that Birkland had secretly performed. The most gruesome detail was that a heart was stored in a styrofoam cup. the lid cracked and leaking formaldehyde. It was clear that Dr. Birkeland had taken great pains to preserve these grisly spoils. The police were called immediately, and what they found only deepened the horror. There were body parts from over 100 different people, all carefully labeled and stored in various states of preservation. The sight was overwhelming, even to the most seasoned investigators. The unit resembled a makeshift morgue, a place where the line between life and death had been blurred beyond recognition. As the investigation progressed, it became clear that Dr. Birkeland had been performing these autopsies in secret, outside of any official capacity, and had kept the parts as a kind of twisted collection. The medical community was shocked by the news, and the town of Pensacola would never forget the bizarre revelation that had been hidden right in front of them. For years, people wondered what had driven Dr. Birkeland to such a state of madness, but no answers were forthcoming. The storage unit was cleared, the remains properly disposed of, but the memory of that horrific discovery remains, a dark stain on the town's history. The sweltering heat of Clearwater, Florida, would make anyone want to escape, but for one family, there was no escaping the horrifying truth lurking inside their storage unit. In January 2012, after years of unpaid bills, the family received a notice from the storage unit manager. If they didn't pay up, belongings would be sold. Panic set in. The family knew what they had stored there and they couldn't let anyone else find out. But it was too late. The manager was already on his way to inspect the unit. The family rushed to the facility in desperation, hoping to get the situation under control. When they arrived, they found the manager standing outside the unit, looking confused and horrified. As the door opened, stifling heat rushed out, followed by a smell that was both sweet and nauseating. Inside, among the banana boxes and old televisions, was a blue coffin. The family's secret was about to be exposed. The caretaker stared at the coffin, unable to comprehend what she was seeing. Finally, a family member broke the silence. "It's her," she said softly, her voice trembling. The coffin contained the remains of their grandmother, who had died in 1995, nearly 17 years earlier. The truth was even stranger than it seemed. The family explained that they couldn't afford a proper burial, so they had placed her in storage, hoping to finally give her the burial she deserved. But years passed, and life got in the way. The storage unit became her final resting place. A coffin in a dark, airless room where temperatures soared during the long Florida summers. The caretaker, still reeling from the shock, stepped back to let the authorities handle the situation. Soon, police and a coroner arrived on the scene, turning what had been a simple case of unpaid storage fees into a full-blown investigation. The officers treated the discovery with the seriousness it deserved. The casket was carefully removed from the unit and taken to the medical examiner's office, where the remains would be examined. Meanwhile, the family stood there, racked with guilt and grief. They had never intended for things to get this far, but the reality of their actions was now undeniable. As news of the discovery spread throughout Clearwater, the community was gripped by a sense of morbid curiosity. Those who knew the family were shocked. They had always seemed so ordinary, so ordinary. But the revelation of her secret burial place cast a new light on their story. It was a reminder that even the most modest lives can harbor dark, tragic secrets. The investigation found no signs of foul play. The grandmother had indeed died of natural causes, and her body had been carefully cared for, at least initially. But the decision to keep her in a suffocating, unconditioned storage facility for nearly 2 decades raised serious ethical and legal questions. Authorities struggled to decide what to do next. Technically, the family had not broken any laws, but their actions were certainly disturbing. If you found this horror story as chilling as I did, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel for more scary stories. Your support not only helps us grow, but also ensures you never miss our latest creepy content. Join our community of horror fans by subscribing and hitting the notification bell so you're always the first to experience the scares. Let's keep creating the scares together.